Hi everybody, welcome to the year of flowers and the flower of the month. This month is the linden flower, and it's also oftentimes called in our area and neighboring tri-state area the basswood or basswood, however you would say it. I've heard it pronounced both ways. So they're interchangeably used, and oftentimes the basswood and a linden tree mean the same tree. All right, and then I would like to thank you for expressing interest in checking out your kits and celebrating the Year of Flowers with us, and Lawrenceburg Public Library for sponsoring the event, and the Friends of the Library for sponsoring the event. And I'll introduce myself again real quickly. I'm Carisa Bunten from 7th Street Gifts. We have a small family-owned and operated brick-and-mortar apothecary shop that was established in 1999. We're open Saturdays and Sundays, noon to 5 right now. And then you can always find us online, 7thstreetgifts.com, and always shoot me an email or a follow-up question to any of our programs that way as well. So again, the linden flower is the flower of this month. And remember that it comes from a tree, so it's a tree flower, so it makes it a little bit different than some of the other botanicals that we've used that have all been plants or maybe woodsy shrubs. So I bet you that you have a linden tree in your woods or your property or your favorite park that you go and play or your favorite trail that you go and hike at. They're a very common, easy to grow, not invasive, but prolific tree that is found pretty much all over the North American continent. It's oftentimes called a bee tree because just about 4 to 6 weeks ago they were covered with their blossoms or their blooms, the flowers, what we're going to make our tisane out of. And you can oftentimes sit under them and look up and see bees all through them. A lot of times in old metaphysical texts and things of that nature, yogis or people like wise sages would sit under linden flowered trees or the bee trees during the pollination season and listen to the buzz of the bees and kind of like zen out and use that as a meditative background. So pretty cool. So again, the linden flower tea comes from a tree, so it's a tree flower. And then in your bag, along with the flowers, and you can only imagine how teeny and tiny a little tree flower would be. If you can just even kind of for a moment think of like a cherry blossom or any sort of tree flower. Locust maybe, they're generally lovely and abundant but very small. So along with your tree flower of linden, you're going to have a bract, which is the first kind of new leaf at the tip that the bud or the flower sprouts off of. And just so you know, the bark of the linden tree can be used for the tea and to be ingested as well. However, in your bag, you're going to have the dried flowers, and then you'll have several bracts, and those will be like the leaves that you'll see. And you'll be able to tell them different from the flower when you look at them. So the flowers themselves aren't quite, but sort of similar to our outer flowers. They're that kind of nice pale yellow. They're real airy and fluffy. And then you can see the leaves of the linden tree. And again, the very tips that the blossoms sprout off of or come off of are called bracts. So you're going to have buds, flowers, and bracts in your bag. And you should get a nice little hint. It's a lighter, less aromatic dried botanical than maybe say like our rose or lavender. But you should still get a nice little whiff of kind of like a woodsy, limey, underlying citrus scent. So I can even smell it through my mask when I opened this. So lighter in fragrance, but still really aromatic and kind of more earthy and woodsy and barky than maybe some of our other botanicals, flowers of the year we've talked to. So it's been used historically in folk medicine across all cultures. So really, if you look at a folk medicine book or folk remedies or folklore, you can find any culture known to humankind that does, all these cultures incorporate the linden flowers into them. And what's sort of cool is that the cultural span is pretty great. However, the use for the linden flower and to consume it as a tea for the same ailments and the same properties is universal. So that would kind of back up its clout or its proof that it's effective for the things that we're going to discuss, because people from far and near use it and ingest it, but all for the same reasons. So the main reason is to aid in sleep. and it is clinically proven to help very mildly to relax, lower blood pressure, and kind of make you like less contracted, your stomach and your tightness, to soothe and encourage calming and restfulness. So this is definitely a tisane, and remember, a tisane is just a name for a beverage that we drink like a tea, but it doesn't actually have Camellia sinensis, the tea leaf, in it. At the very end of the day, or when you're in for the night, or when you need to kind of induce an instant calm or restfulness state. So this is not a tea that you would wake up in the morning and prepare before you headed out for your day or your busy afternoon. This is a wind down, calm down, soothing, calming restfulness tisane or tea. It also is very good for soothing upset stomach. So mainly when you kind of overeat and you're sort of tight or bloated, or if you have like cramping and a tight cramping like abdomen, this linden tea soothes and relaxes and encourages calming and restfulness just from consumption. Now, there are scientific validations that it does lower the blood pressure. Remember how we talked about hibiscus does that too. So a lot of folk medicines, tinctures, and tisanes would be a linden and hibiscus combination, usually equal parts, and it would be used to treat, in a folk medicine manner, blood pressure. So this is something to think about, and it also kind of, when we get elevated and nervous and have a long day, we may have a high blood pressure, not like in a worrisome way where you go to a doctor and take a prescription, but just from angst and energy and stress basically does raise your blood pressure. So this does encourage the blood pressure to drop and lower really naturally and safely on its own. Now again, this is a tisane, and it can be ingested hot or cold. It does taste good either way. It's kind of just a personal preference. It does require a longer steep time, so just about 15 minutes. And you want to use a full rolling boil, like a very, very, very hot water, to infuse this, because the blossoms and the leaves kind of seal up the bracts after they're picked, and they need a really high temperature and an extended steep time to pull out all the medicine that you would need and get like a flavorful, strong enough tea that would be palatable and taste good and not seem watery. It makes a really good sun tea as well, similar to the hibiscus that we spoke about last month. And that's about 4 to 6 hours. So you would just do a really clean, dry, sterile jar and incorporate your linden flower, however much, depending on the size of your jar and the quantity of tea you want to make. Top it off with a clean water, lid it up, and then just set it in the sun for 4 to 6 hours. This is kind of a difficult botanical to measure because of the bracts, and the flowers are so airy and fluffy. You'll see your ounce in your kit just about fills your bag up to the tippy top. So I take pinches at a time and kind of incorporate it into my teacups or your tea ball or your tea strainer until I get about a half a tablespoon-ish, and I eye it. Then certainly if I was going to do a sun tea in a larger jar, like a mason jar, a 1624 or 32 ounce, I would fill it maybe about a quarter of the bottom up, maybe a quarter full, a fourth, with my botanical. And so with folk medicine and with this, because it is so safe and mild and easy to work with, ratios and measurements and quantities can be pretty flexible. So it does have like a lime-like, earthy, kind of citrusy flavor. So a lot of the European recipes call it like the lime tea. So I can pick up on the lime a little bit in a citrus undertone. I don't know that I would call it lime tea, but you'll oftentimes see it called that in folk remedies and medicines, mainly in European origins and sources. But it does have a really nice, light, kind of earthy, citrusy flavor all at once. But it is a lighter tea. You'll always be able to see through it. It doesn't get opaque. It's transparent. It turns like a really light yellow, similar to chamomile color, maybe just a little bit even lighter than that. And what I like to do is crush or bruise just prior to use to release the essential oils. So you'll leave it dry like we have it and just kind of let it rest in its natural state. And then as you're getting ready to use it, you're just going to kind of, you have a mortar and pestle, that's fine too, but I like my index finger and my thumb. Opposable thumbs come in handy. So you're just gonna crush it and bruise it, and you'll see some of the little flower heads even. I kind of like pop them. They almost sound like a seed head when you pop them, which would make sense because there's seeds in there, right? And then you can feel the stickiness. I can feel like a light resiny stickiness of the essential oils that I'm releasing there. So it does help release it and give you a better flavor and help that infusion. You can even see the stickiness from the essential oils made the flower stick to my palm as I bruised and crushed it. So it's kind of dry and not a lot of scent and flavor until you bruise it and crush it and then introduce it to your hot water, and then it really comes to life as far as flavor and aroma comes into play. So it blends really well with chamomile and lavender, two of our other flowers of the year earlier on, to make like a very much calming sleepy time, nighttime tea, safe for children as well. And it takes very little of all three to get a nice 6 to 8 ounce tisane for restfulness, calming, lowering blood pressure, and encouraging sleep. Now, we've talked about this before, and most of your kits contain the organic muslin bay, but last month's didn't, and neither is this month's, because there's a lot to be said specifically with linden, more so than other botanicals, to allow it to mix freely with its water, or if you're going to tincture it with its alcohol or glycerin, its base. There is a really big importance, especially with the bracts and the leaves and these little fuzzy yellow buds in particular, that barrier, that veil that would come between if you used a tea bag or a strainer or a muslin bag, really kind of slows down the antioxidants in the infusion, and you get way less medicine. So you'll see too, if you kind of do some follow-up research, there's a lot of folk medicine, and really just kind of the rule of thumb is with linden, you never use a tea bag or a barrier during infusion. You allow it to mix freely to really infuse every bit of medicine out of that. Now, generally speaking, the flowers and the bracts saturate and sink to the bottom and leave a little bit of sediment, but generally not anything that would keep somebody from being able to drink it. However, if you are very discerning about that sort of thing, or you know the person you're going to serve it to is, it's very easy to strain out prior to ingestion after you allow it to steep freely within the liquid, generally the water, the boiling water. So you could do that just with like a bamboo strainer. One of your muslin bags from an earlier class, you could kind of put around the mouth of your jar or your glass and tighten it with the drawstring and then pour your infusion through. Or just use like cheesecloth, muslin, or a coffee filter, and just use a rubber band or something and kind of make just a little strainer as you pour it into your glass, or even a larger jar for storage if you want to strain out that botanical. Now, linden oftentimes was a fortune-telling herb or botanical or flower and bracts, and that may lend its folklore to never mixing it without, or never using a tea bag or a strainer to allow it to mix freely, is that a lot of people would come with troubles, right, to having trouble sleeping, upset stomach, high blood pressure, unable to calm down or feel a state of restfulness. And your folk doctor, your gypsy, your medicine man, whatever the person that you would want to call that person in your village or area that you came to talk to, would oftentimes give that person a linden flower tea or infusion the minute they came in, just kind of calm them down and relax them for the reading or the consultation or the meeting or whatever word you would want to apply to the encounter. When that tea was gone, after the person started to drink it and relax and kind of unwind, the person, the sage, I guess the fortune teller or the clairvoyant or whatever word you would want to use, would swish the linden flowers and the bracts and tea leaves around, tree leaves I should say, and give a reading of sorts based off of the botanicals that settled in the bottom of the cup. So it was very commonly given at the beginning of readings and gypsy encounters and visits, and then oftentimes given like a reading in the tea leaves, right? We still hear that saying today, oh, well, we don't know the results of the election yet. They haven't read the tea leaves. So that's where that saying and that folklore and origin comes from, and linden flowers are generally a fortune-telling flower tea. So again, that lends itself to the lore and the legend to allow it to mix freely with water. And if that bothers you, we'll just strain it out before ingestion. But this is a tea that we want you to make with very hot water, extend its steep time, and ingest at the end of a long day to unwind and relax and feel better and sleep well. So one thing, we could talk a whole other class about all the components and the isoflavones and the isolated things that scientists pluck out and study under a microscope with a fine-tooth comb, but we won't. We're just going to get to the basic points of the linden, and then the main moral to that story is if you happen to be taking a prescription lithium-based medicine, generally as a strong antidepressant or sleep aid, you would not drink linden flower tea. So that's the one pharmaceutical that it does interfere with, and it would keep your lithium from processing properly. And so you would not combine those two together. And if you take a medicine this strong with this ingredient in it, you would certainly know, okay? And then something kind of cool about that is it shows you the calming and stress-reducing effects that it has with a nice, strong botanical infusion if it's so potent that it would interact with and keep a medicine as strong as lithium from being as effective. So that kind of lends a little bit of backup to its properties and the legitimacy of using this herb as a relaxing sleeping tea aid. All right, so in conclusion, the bee tree or the basswood or basswood tree, the linden flower tree, is our flower of the month. And it is a tree flower, and in your bag are the tree flowers and the bracts, which you'll remember are the teeny first type little leaves that produce the bud and the flower, okay? And not that that's in your bag today, but if you have one of these on your property or you want to cultivate one on your own or use your own folk medicine or expand your knowledge, the bark can be used as well as an ingestible, safe food grade tisane. There are not any cultures that you can look at in their folk medicine and their lore and their old-timey medicine remedies that does not incorporate linden flower in. And remember, the cool thing about it is even though the lore and the uses reach far and wide to many corners of planet Earth, they're all used interchangeably to aid in sleep, soothe upset stomach, encourage calming and restfulness, and lower blood pressure in a healthy, normal way, like blood pressure that would be elevated from angst or like a stressful day or just running around and being too busy, okay? A tisane, again, is what we call a botanical in a flower that's infused and consumed similar and prepared similar to that of a tea, but doesn't actually contain any true tea leaf. And with linden flower, to get a nice light gold transparent color and a good flavor, remember that earthy limey flavor, it needs a longer steep time than other traditional botanicals. Something like lavender, right, you wouldn't steep over than 3 to 4 minutes because it would get too strong too fast. So this is quite the opposite. So again, a longer steep time of about 15 minutes, a sun tea infusion of about 4 to 6 hours. Because of the airiness and the leaves and kind of the general nature of the botanical itself, it is difficult to measure. So I like to take pinches at a time and just incorporate it into my quantity and amount and kind of use my palm to gauge and judge the amount that I would want depending on the size of beverage I was going to make. Am I going to make a teacup? Am I going to make a big jar? Am I going to make a big pitcher? That's up to you. We like to bruise and crush just prior to use to release those essential oils. And again, it has a mild but like a resinousy, sticky quality to it once you do that. And it does release the scent, the flavor, and the essential oil in a user-friendly quantity. Just traces of it is all you need. It blends really well with chamomile and lavender and other blends as well, but typically chamomile, lavender, and linden make like a knockout drop tincture or a knockout drop tea. Like you drink that and sweet dreams, sayonara sucker, you are out. So with linden, you allow it to mix freely with water. And if that bothers you because there isn't a barrier and there's too much of the botanical matter in your drink or your water, your base, your solvent, you can strain it out prior to ingestion. And if you were to be somebody who takes a medicine that has lithium in it, this would not be the tea for you. So that's pretty important, but other than that, it's pretty much good to go for anybody. You can give it to small children. Obviously, you would give them less amounts, or you could steep it for 8 to 10 minutes instead of 10 to 15 and make it a little bit weaker. Add a little bit of stevia or honey or sugar or whatever your sweetener of choice is, and give it to a little kid to help them fall asleep, or if they eat too much or have like a sore tummy from too much candy, or just general excitement, like grandma and grandpa came over and everybody's all wound up and it's bedtime. Linden tea is the way to go. And I'm going to turn this around real quick again, just to look at this beautiful poster that Denise made. If you come to the shop sometime, take a road trip up to the mean streets of Newport, Kentucky. Our second room, we've redone the shop for COVID safety, is filled with all these beautiful posters. So I can't wait to collect the rest of them. So in conclusion, the year of flowers this month is the linden flower. I'm Carisa Bunten with 7th Street Gifts, and a huge shout out and giant thanks to the Lawrenceburg Public Library District. And, I told Karen too. Karen Mast is one of our staff members at 7th Street Gifts, and she begged and weighed all these for you. And I said I would give her a shout out on this video, so there it is. Thanks a million. Enjoy your botanicals in your year of the flowers. And next month will be echinacea and or coneflower. So we'll talk about that as an immune booster and something that grows easily and readily all around here. So stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you soon.